So welcome everybody. We still may have a few people joining from the waiting room, which is absolutely fine, but welcome to concurrent session B2, Ontario's Community Justice Coordinators. My name is Kelly Curtis. I'll be your facilitator slash moderator for this session. Before we get started, I just want to review some quick housekeeping notes, and then I'm going to introduce our speakers and we'll be on our way with our session. So first, I would like to draw your attention to the bottom of your screen where you will find the Zoom toolbar. You can use the Q&A feature to submit questions throughout the presentation. We will review those questions at the end of the session and do our best to answer as many as possible in the time that we do have. Please ensure that your microphone is on mute until the Q&A portion of this session. Please note too that we will be recording this session to upload into the conference website for future viewing by those who have registered for the conference. You will be able to access this platform for about 90 days following the conference. I'd like to remind everyone that we have closed captioning for all of these sessions, so please click on the CC icon below the video window on your screen to access that function. We kindly do ask that you complete the evaluation for the session by clicking on the session in the agenda on the virtual platform. There will be a survey button at the bottom of the session next to the join button. Your feedback is very much appreciated and will be used to inform future events such as this conference. We'd like to respectfully ask that all of those who are attending today's session to engage with each other thoughtfully, always considering the impact of your words and your interactions on others. As facilitators, we're not able to tolerate any abusive or inappropriate behavior or hate speech, and we'll ensure that everyone who engages in such is removed from the session. If you have been disturbed or are affected by any events such as that, please do what you need to do for you. Take a break, step outside, practice some deep breathing exercises, or reach out to somebody that you trust. If you are in crisis and you require immediate support, please click on the FAQ icon on the conference homepage to access contact information for Connex Ontario. And if you'd like to report an incident, you can contact the event manager, Sherry Sim, by either clicking on assistance button at the top right menu of your bar screen to send an email, or you can text Sherry at 416-605-5975. I am now going to turn it over to one of our presenters, Jenny Rodopoulos.
Thank you, Kelly. On behalf of the Ministry of the Attorney General and working in collaboration with the Ontario Court of Justice, we are very happy to be here presenting as part of the conference for the Provincial Human Services and Justice Coordinating Committee, given the integral work that you all do to support individuals in the criminal justice system in Ontario, and we thank you for having us here. As Kelly said, my name is Jenny Rodopoulos. I am Crown Counsel for Justice Centres, and I'm very excited to be joined by Kyle Ali, who is the leading community justice coordinator in Windsor. Kyle has been involved in the social service and justice field for over 10 years in Windsor. He completed his undergraduate and graduate degrees in criminology at the University of Windsor, where he focused on program development and rehabilitation. He has worked in frontline and management positions for organizations such as the John Howard Society and the City of Windsor prior to joining the Ministry of the Attorney General here to lead the Community Justice Coordinator role in Windsor. The next person I'd love to introduce is Prab Gitta, who's been with the Punjabi Community Health Services for the past 10 years and is currently leading the Community Justice Coordinator work in Peel. Before stepping into this role, Prab spent 8 years as an addiction counselor specializing in harm reduction and alcohol addiction support. His deep passion for helping others and his experience in community-based care continue to guide his work today. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to Terry Zokol, who is the Restorative Community Justice Coordinator in Thunder Bay and brings a wealth of experience and education to this role. Terry holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and is a certified counselor with specialty in cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and art therapy. With over 13 years of experience on the front line, Terry is passionate about helping people and guiding them to begin their healing process. So today, we are going to take you through the significance of community justice in our courts and working together to enhance access to multi-sector human services in the Ontario Court of Justice. The launch of the Community Justice Coordinator roles in Ontario and looking closely at 3 specific sites who are leading this work. And with that context in mind, it's important to recognize who is impacted by the current system and why a community justice approach is necessary. This work is really driven by the reality that many Indigenous, racialized, and other vulnerable individuals are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, and this is compounded by broader system-wide challenges that limit access to justice in many marginalized communities. And we know that people are struggling with many intersectional challenges, whether it's homelessness, mental health, addictions, housing, and that we need to take an integrated approach. And that is why the thrust of this work is driven by how can we work within the Ontario Court of Justice to broaden community justice work in courthouses and strengthen the integration of human services and programs to better support justice-involved individuals. And that is the essence and magic of community justice. As a framework, it's about improving outcomes, not just for individuals, but for the justice system and our communities as a whole. It brings together coordinated responsive services from across sectors, many of which are represented by you here today, to build strong partnerships and networks. Together, we can offer meaningful support to those who come into contact with the justice system, and in doing so, create justice-based solutions that help build safer and healthier communities. Systems integration is easy to talk about, but difficult to achieve, especially when we operate in silos within our respective spheres. And so working together to create processes that hold us accountable when supporting individuals impacted by the social determinants of health and are intersecting with the criminal justice system is critical. So how do we turn this vision of community justice into action? One of the ways we're doing that right here in Ontario is by working closely with local agencies through the role of community justice coordinators. So community justice coordinators are an initiative developed in collaboration with the Ontario Court of Justice, and they are already successfully operating in 4 communities across the province: Windsor, Thunder Bay, Brampton, and Hamilton. And they replicate on a smaller scale some of the innovative approaches used by the Ontario Justice Centres. The goal is to enhance access to community-based supports and programs for those who need them the most. Community justice coordinators are dedicated, full-time, non-legal professionals who work with local agencies to bring community justice in the courthouse. And their role is to support the timely coordination, resolution, and diversion of cases by connecting individuals to existing community and Indigenous justice programs. And while community justice coordinators don't provide in-house services, they act as a vital bridge, linking justice-involved individuals to critical supports offered by local agencies. Community justice coordinators work closely with community organizations, the judiciary, Crowns, Defense, and Duty Council, as well as unrepresented persons, to create meaningful opportunities for individuals to access needs-calibrated supports, striving to address the social determinants of health and the underlying risk factors that often lead to involvement with the justice system. CJCs have extensive knowledge of a broad range of culturally relevant community-based services. And as you will soon hear from Kyle, Terry, and Prob, this community-driven approach is making a real impact. By facilitating early direct referrals to local community-based supports, CJCs help individuals engage with services that can help them improve their outcomes, make court appearances more meaningful, enhance court efficiencies, and contribute to building safer and more resilient communities. And as you will come to see, it is not just service to the accused persons, but it can extend to making connections to family members and siblings in need. And so the development of the community justice coordinator role is guided by a thoughtful and evidence-based approach to create clear lines of communication and processes to support accused persons at the earliest possible opportunity when they intersect with the criminal justice system. And we begin with research and data analysis to identify key trends and understand the unique issues impacting the local courthouse and community. For example, in a courthouse location that has thousands of cases annually, we ask, where can we make the greatest impact? How do we identify what cases will benefit most from a CJC referral? And how do we design an intake process that's both rapid and responsive? We know that not all of the offenses are the same, and neither are the individuals behind them. Someone charged with a mischief or a theft may actually be facing challenges like mental health, unemployment, or housing instability. And that's why the intake approach is tailored to understand the needs of the person, not just the charge. And the last phase is about engagement with community, the local judiciary, the Crown's Office, and Defense and Duty Council to design a tailored community justice coordinator model that works for the specific courthouse and community it serves. And throughout this process, We engage with local community organizations to explore opportunities for alignment and partnership. And a key part of that conversation is understanding how the community justice coordinator role can strengthen collaboration, not just between the court and agencies, but across the broader network of community it serves. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle to tell you a little bit about the background of what led to the development of the CJC model in Windsor. Kyle?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle. I work under the Ministry Attorney General's Justice Centers Division. And for the past 3 years, I've been developing and administering the CJC role for the Windsor-Essex region. So to piggyback off of what Jenny has been speaking about, the implementation of CJCs starts with research to better understand the local community. And I'm here to talk about Windsor. Now, for Windsor, we've been seeing a steady population growth over the past decade, with some relatively significant increases since 2020. And in terms of this population, Windsor has a growing visible minority group, which is predominantly persons identifying as Arab, Black, and South Asian. Now, despite the increasing population, Windsor currently has the highest unemployment rate in Ontario, which sits around 9.2% and is likely to be affected by ongoing world events related to our major industries and trade. Now, in terms of our justice landscape, Windsor's Ontario Court of Justice has also been seeing an increase of files entering our system, with just shy of 7,700 cases being received in 2024 alone. Similarly, our Windsor Police Service documents an 11% increase in crisis-related calls requiring police intervention. So we have an increasing population, an increase in unemployment, an increase in cases into our court system, and an increase in crisis-related calls to our police. There are going to be some rising needs. So let's actually move over to the next slide and look at how people can get connected with a CJC in Windsor. And I'll pass it over to Jenny.
And so with strong support and leadership from the local administrative judge, Justice Murphy in Windsor, as well as the local Crown and local Defense and Duty Council, this is the current tailored pathway employed in Windsor for referrals to the Community Justice Coordinator. And it really is one of the finest examples of bringing community justice right into the courthouse. And so here's a bit about how it works. At any stage of the process, whether it's at bail, screening, Crown, or judicial pretrials, the Crown, Defense and Duty Council or the court can refer someone to the Community Justice Coordinator. Kyle and his colleague are physically present in the courthouse and are located in a key area where they often get referrals through walk-ins, including many unrepresented accused persons. And whether the matter is on a diversion track or working towards a guilty plea or even on a trial track, Kyle is helping individuals engage early in the process, ensuring court appearances are meaningful and working through the court process more efficiently. And we've seen a real impact. If the head Crown were here today, he'd tell you how significant this work has been for the local Crown's office. And it's not just Crowns making referrals. Defense and Duty Council are actively seeking out CJC referrals for their clients because they don't often have the time or knowledge to keep up with what's out there and what their clients' needs. This model shows what's possible when a dedicated resource connects the individual to a whole network of community agencies. It's collaborative, it's practical, and it's making a difference. And there's no better way to understand the impact than to hear it directly from Kyle, which I'll turn it over to in just a moment, but also later on from Terry and Prob about how their work is impacting their communities and what it means for the individuals and communities they serve. So back to you, Kyle.
Yeah, so in this potentially overwhelming diagram, my CJC role comes into play during the intake portion. As a CJC, my job is to meet with participants, to identify needs, to develop service plans that address those needs with attention to Crown and court expectations, to monitor progress along the way, and to help articulate steps that have been taken at the close of a file. Now, one thing that has made this connecting with people very easy, as Jenny's mentioned, is where my office is physically located in our courthouse. It is located very centrally, and most people actually have to pass by my office on their way to court. And it's extremely common for persons to engage me with questions whenever my door is open, so I'm in a very accessible location. But I would like to talk to you folks more about how the program has been operating, so we'll actually hop over to the next slide here. All right. So here we can see some of the core program data for Windsor. Now, from October of 2022 to this past September, the CJCs in Windsor have received a total of 1,417 case referrals, which has resulted in over 2,700 referrals of individuals to various organizations, programs, and services. Now, in practice, this amounts to the utilization of services from over 40 organizations and growing. As you can also see, the bulk of these referrals have aimed to address items related to basic needs, mental health, counseling, employment, and addictions, which is in line with the prior research regarding context for action. Now, of the cases referred, the predominant majority, or 87%, were referred on a diversionary track, where these matters would be withdrawn at their close. And we've also seen that a large portion of the referrals, roughly 68%, are being those related to crimes against the person, and more specifically, the majority of individual charges, or roughly 55%, being related to assaults. Now, this is actually one thing I do want to highlight, because these weren't necessarily the types of files that we expected to see at the beginning. But through this process, we've been able to see that these cases oftentimes involve people who have a high number of basic or social needs that are in high stress situations on a regular basis. Now, numbers are great. They help us gain a general understanding of operations, and they outline trends or needs. But to help highlight exactly what I'm referring to, the characteristics of these assaults, I wanted to provide some real-world context so you can really get a feel for what we're trying to do here. Now, I figured the best way to do that would be to go through a case study of a file that went through CJC. So let's hop over to the next slide. Okay. Now, for the purpose of this case study, I'm going to be referring to this participant as Andy. So from the beginning, at the time of his involvement, Andy was an 18-year-old male who identified as being Black African American and part of the LGBTQ community. At the time of charges, Andy was residing with his mother and siblings. And as a result of obtaining rather significant charges stemming from an assault that occurred in the home, he was required to find alternative housing arrangements. But unfortunately, Andy didn't have a positive network of social support, and he found himself temporarily homeless until eventually finding shelter with a family friend in what can only really be described as a unstable household with strangers going in and out on a regular basis, if you catch my drift. Now, something that's important to note here is that Andy's original charges were not screened for jail time at the onset, meaning he didn't initially qualify for legal aid, and he didn't have legal representation. He was a self-rep. So over a significant period of time as a self-rep with no external supports and no end in sight for the criminal matters, Andy accumulated multiple breaches for non-attendance at the home and communication with his family. These were his primary supports. Eventually, this growing collection of new charges resulted in his court matters being screened for a short, sharp period of custody. Now, it was sometime after all of this when a Crown attorney in the Windsor office thought, maybe this is a case that could benefit from some CJC intervention, and referred the file to me on a guilty plea track with reduced sentencing. So again, one of my core functions running the day-to-day operations of the program is to try and figure out what's going on. Why is this person in contact with the law? And putting together a plan to address these different issues. So when I met with Andy, I got to know him. I learned a lot about his personal circumstances and the specific issues that he was facing. So he had a very unstable housing situation. He had a lack of any form of financial support. He had an utter lack of positive social supports. His engagement with school stopped as a result of him being displaced from the home. And what I learned about his family, I would only describe as general family dysfunction or even intergenerational trauma, wherein many of his family members have been or are currently involved in the criminal justice system. And then, of course, his lack of access to legal supports and representation. So with all of these different things identified, and maybe a little bit of motivational interviewing, I worked with Andy to put together a plan to address these concerns and ultimately promote his ongoing stability within the community. So I connected him with what is referred to as the Amani program. Now, you may have heard of this back in the day when it was referred to as the SAPACY program. But anyways, the Amani program is a support program for persons up to the age of 29 that identify as being Black, African Canadian, African American, or Caribbean. So I coordinated with the Amani program staff to help gain them access to a community support worker to assist with housing, education, and basic needs, and access to a registered social worker to administer one-on-one, culturally relevant, focused counseling to address specific topics related to things like mental health promotion strategies, conflict resolution, healthy relationships, boundaries, among other things. Also, while reviewing this file, I noticed that the most recent screening position included a short, sharp bit of custody. But I noticed that he didn't have access to a legal aid certificate or counsel. So in talking to Andy, he indicated that he wasn't eligible for these things, which in my experience didn't make sense. So I reconnected Andy with legal aid and assisted him with this process. Now, getting Andy set up with legal aid came with some hurdles. I'm not sure how familiar everyone here is with West Indian or Caribbean culture, but we have a tendency to call people who are not our actual family auntie or uncle. Now, Andy, an isolated 18-year-old with no prior experience on legal aid applications, reported that he was residing with his auntie, and his auntie refused to comply with legal aid financial information requests, so he was denied. Anyways, between myself and staff at the Amani program, we were able to address this issue with legal aid. He was able to obtain a certificate, and he was able to obtain legal representation for court appearances, which was very helpful because Andy did not have access to reliable transportation, let alone income. So over the course of working with Andy and the supports that were set in place, we were able to get him on temporary financial assistance through Ontario Works, get him back in school, connect him with day support programs through the youth wellness hubs, have him make personal growth through counseling, where he was actually able to articulate lessons learned and how some of these things can be used in practice. We're able to get him back on track with part-time employment, which eventually supported his positive exit from Ontario Works. And we were able to get him into much more stable housing. Now, backing up in time, before all of these items were addressed, specifically the housing piece, some rather unfortunate things happened while he was living with his auntie. Sadly, one day Andy came home to find her body. She had passed away from a suspected overdose and medical complications. Thankfully, by this point, because of the supports that were in place with Amani and the CJC, Andy called me, we called Amani, and he immediately began leaning on the supports in place. We were able to get him straight into grief counseling and shortly thereafter into stable housing. By the close of this file, I had already held a number of discussions with the Crown Attorney's Office to provide brief updates on his progress and access to services. So through all of this, they decided that because of the significant personal progress made by Andy, because of the relevant victim input provided, and because of the circle of support we were able to set in place, Andy's matters would shift from a guilty plea stream to a withdrawal stream, which was amazing because that has significantly assisted him with his post-secondary education goals, and it's going to support him in future employment endeavors. Now, when I think about Andy's story, I frequently think about the reality that traditional courts are not designed to address social issues. And I find myself sometimes asking the question of, where would Andy be, or where would this file be if these connections were not made? And I'm always delighted to know that, thankfully, no one here in this call today has an answer to that question, because they were. So this is the kind of work that we're trying to do with community justice coordinators. We're trying to identify and address root causes of crime, break cycles of offending, and promote community safety and well-being through the connection of individuals to community supports. And so far, as pointed out on the right, we've had some really positive feedback from local stakeholders and community partners. And with that, we'll close out Andy's chapter and we'll hop over to some of our other presenters here.
Thanks, Kyle. And I'll turn it over to Prab to tell us a little bit about the Peel CJC model, what led to the development of the CJC role, and how he is leading the work in his community. Prab?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kyle, for sharing that case. My name is Prab Gita, and I've been a counselor before this role, so I get to see this role in that kind of lens and kind of bridge any gaps and already have connections before this role so that I can kind of help the community. I do work with PCHS, which is, I think, was strategically made given the diversity in Peel. And that's where we kind of aligned ourselves with trying to take care of some of the language barrier and also the education piece, because not a lot of South Asians are quick to go to for counseling or seek help as well. So some demographics that we do here have, Peel includes both rural and urban communities, with 1 in 10 Ontarians living in Peel. Some things that I just wanted to highlight here was that Brampton did receive 16,830 cases. And those are top 5 would be theft over and under, assault, non-sexual, theft, motor vehicles, and frauds. What I'm seeing a lot of cases of and recently is the mental health and addiction sectors. That's where we're seeing a lot of overdoses, a lot of reports of wait lists for mental health. So I think that's where the CJC come in, as to kind of bridge the gap between any wait lists, and so that we can make the process faster and more accessible as well. Homelessness and housing is continue a challenge in Peel. That's something that has been there for a while, that I've seen even when I was a counselor as well. But now being able to kind of make other connections and trying to help with housing and providing shelter is a great thing. So we can move on to the next slide there. So this is something that we, like I said, strategically added PCHS that I work for. This is to trying to get that culturally responsive approach, linking individuals to critical needs-based services, and enhance the access to justice. So this is how we kind of marketed it to some of the crowns, and trying to make the community, promote community safety along those lines, and to bring an inclusiveness to individual needs as well. Similar to Kyle's Windsor as well, we do have the Crown screening for any type of cases that they deem eligible. We go to a diversion stream or a guilty plea stream. And then also I would do a rapid intake at that time as well. And this is where it gives us an opportunity to find out more about the person and find out more of how we can provide that help. And we're not trying to do a one shoe fits all kind of approach. We're trying to find out what other areas that we can help a client out in. For example, housing, employment, child and family support services. So we're trying to collaborate with other agencies, so that way that's easy to access some of these services. What helps is that PCHS has a lot of these in-house programs which I can bypass any kind of wait list and get them the connection very seamlessly, and also having the collaborative effort with other networks, other agencies that we can seamlessly make those connections as well. Sometimes a client would recommend a program, but in this intake, sometimes it takes longer than rapid intake. We do identify other areas where we can work on. For example, if it's not just anger management, maybe there's a substance abuse issue, maybe there's a parenting issue as well. So we're able to go and look for new programs or new agencies that come up with new creative ways to help out. So we're always trying to figure out how we can collaborate. I know in the beginning in Peel, it was hard to contact individuals, but we're able to network with duty counsel, legal aid, and provide those contacts. So once we got those contacts, we see a surge of cases, and boy, it's like nose deep at this point. We're just trying to keep up. I know it's a lot of cases going through, and I know it says here in the rapid resolution is 30 days or less. Sometimes it does take longer because a lot of people do have a language barrier finding the correct counselor or culturally. Sometimes some clients don't want a culturally appropriate counselor because of shame or anything like that. I know for one case that I had was in the LGBT community, he or she didn't want to get connected with a South Asian counselor because of that reason. So sometimes you gotta kind of hear them out. And the best thing to do is listen to them. A lot of people don't think that we're on their side or anything like that. They think counseling is just the consequence. But once we hear their story, somebody actually cares about me. That's where they open up, and that first contact is everything. So once you build that trust, you're able to easily address any other issues like homelessness. A lot of people won't say it out in the beginning, but once that trust is built, you're able to address those issues as well. For example, at PCHS, we had some homelessness issues. We do send them off to case management, and some individual couldn't afford groceries, so we're able to give gift cards for 3 months just to keep them a level, and then that kind of relieved their stress, and then the counseling. So I think a collaborative effort is the best approach rather than just a standard approach to the counseling.
Thank you, Prab.
And here are some of the examples of, we're not limited. I know I am from PCHS, but the great thing about CJC is that it's very fluid and we're able to move around and be creative. I think we have a great team that supports us in those decisions. So if somebody needs social services and also needs practical supports like life skills, food programs that I just mentioned, we're able to do that and find creative ways. And there's no doors that we won't open in order to help any type of client. And it's better to open new doors than or knocking on the same doors and not getting help. So I think when we see a lot of people reoffending, we want to get to the root of the problem and see how we can support this individual by showing compassion and showing that someone's on their side, especially with the self-rep. They believe that they don't got nobody and they're scared, they don't know what to do, and they don't know the process that's going on. I think that's where CJCs had to take a vital role in that. Even afterwards, so once we finish the program, there's a lot of phone calls, and I think Kyle and Terry can attest to this too as well, that they would like to continue counseling and maybe ask about other different programs that may be available. So I think this thing is great. Being a counselor before, and I've never seen this in the past 8 years, and I do see this as making a difference for sure, and that makes me proud.
Thank you, Prab.
Yeah.
Okay, I will now turn it over to Terry so we can hear about her role leading the work in Thunder Bay. Terry? You're on mute, Terry.
Of course it happens to me. Oh.
There we go. All good.
No worries, no worries. Hi, everybody. My name is Terry Zelkel. I work in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Thunder Bay, Ontario. So, the justice imperative, what I want to flag here is that in 2024, the Thunder Bay Courthouse received 5,372 Ontario Court of Justice cases, making that 43% of all cases received in Northwest Region. Northwest Region would be Thunder Bay and anywhere to the Manitoba border, including Kenora, Dryden, Sioux Lookout, Fort Frances. That's a big region. One of the things, as well as Thunder Bay has had the highest homicide rate amongst all of Canada, right? And Thunder Bay has the highest rate in Canada. So I want to also say that for more context, please read Seven Fallen Feathers by Tanya Talladega, or look into the Moses Beaver Inquest, which talks about improving mental health care for Indigenous people. So one of the social demographics that I service here in Thunder Bay are Indigenous people. So we're seeing a lot of homeless people, right? 68% of the respondents here in Thunder Bay are Indigenous. 78% of that are using substances and have mental health conditions. So I also want to point out that 74% of Indigenous adults in Thunder Bay report having one or more chronic conditions. So multi-morbidity. A lot of First Nation people are dealing with high increase of diabetes, where it affects, we can't get, because we have such a northern climate and we have flying reserves, and sometimes you don't get anything fruit wise or health wise to the First Nations. A lot of people turn to fast, cheap, economical food like fast food, chips, pop. And so with that increases diabetes throughout the north. So you're not only dealing with diabetes, you have increased alcoholism and suicide rates amongst our people. Next slide.
So let me jump in very quickly. What I'll say is that the model here in Thunder Bay was developed under the leadership of RSJ Gibson and RSJ Allard, working in close collaboration with Mattawa First Nation, which Terry will tell you about in just a few seconds, as well as the local HSJCC elders and people with lived experience. And if RSJ Gibson or the elders were here today, they would tell you how critical Terry's role has been to bringing together multiple agencies in an intentional way to support the individuals that they support within the criminal justice system. So Terry, take it away.
Thanks. So Mattawa is a tribal council located here in Thunder Bay. It serves 9 First Nations, mainly the Aralan, Constance Lake, Long Lake, Martin Falls, Nishkandika, Webekwe, Abinatong, Giningaming, and Diminimic. Mattawa promotes the power of unity, the dignity of difference. So with that being said, my name is Wawatekniashik Nadishnakas, Makwa Dodem, Migizi Segegan Nadoji. Basically, what I just said was my spiritual name, where I come from, Eagle Lake First Nation, and my clan is Bear. So what I see with the creation of this court, it's actually a restorative justice court created here in Thunder Bay, Ontario. We have court in a circle room with the justice. Sometimes Justice Gibson comes and attends the court. We have Crown Duty Counsel, legal aid representative, myself, and a lot of the justice community partners within in the court. Next slide. So through this court, we are hoping that, as with Kyle and Prab, we also do a fast, rapid intake, but a lot of the knowledge gathering is right in the circle when the court is being in process. I gather the information, take it down, and then once the client tells his kind of side of the story and the Crown will tell their synopsis of what happened, the judge will say, okay, this client is perfect for Terry, and I'll take that client once he gets a new court date. We'll go back into a little room, and at that point, I do a fast intake, just like Prob and Kyle do. And at that point, we are really talking with the client face to face, kind of doing a fast intake of what's been happening. Why is he before the court? And a lot of the times, it's because of addictions, mental health, and so forth. And a lot of the time, I do a trauma-informed, fast approach on how they are going through the court. And a lot of them are so scared, like their family is sitting with them. They're like, don't know what the next steps are. So once I do the referral or the intake, I do the referral right away. And so I kind of peep into the court. I'm like, hey, come over here. And right away, it's fast. It's a fast-paced process. And we get the referral process going. And some of the people that I like to shout out to are the John Howard Society, Canadian Mental Health, No Kiwin, the Friendship Center, Elizabeth Fry, and Métis Nation. They've been an integral part of just working side by side, working with them and supporting the clients through the court process. Next slide. So right here, you see an example of the Restorative Justice Court that is actually going to be sitting on Thursday and Friday. If you want to come over and observe, feel free to check in. But I want to also talk to you about a client that I had. He was a 35-year-old male. He identified as a white individual, and he wanted to, hang on, so he wanted to resolve an assault charge that was going through the court, and the assault was on his teenage son. His son was immediately removed from the home and put into foster care because he has no support. And so when I was talking with the client, I discovered that his son was Indigenous, so therefore he was put into an Indigenous foster care system. And I want to, when talking with the individual, he was wondering about the culture and so those kind of things. He was already working with the Canadian Mental Health Association on counseling and parenting courses, but I also hooked him up with, I discovered that there was some abuse, substance abuse issues. So he was also working on anger management and emotional regulation. So one of the connections I hooked him up with was the Nokivan Tribal Council. They did an anger management program with him. And because he was already working with the Canadian Mental Health Association, we also wanted to bring in the son, and that is the reason why that we referred to the Anishinaabe Nation, because they do healing circles, because we wanted to work towards reconciliation for this unit. So short stories, the matters were drawn, and since those were drawn, there has been no involvement with the criminal system, and they continue to engage in cultural-based programming.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, so I'll turn it back to Kyle to give us an overview of some of the provincial snapshot data we keep that contains information about the great work that Terry, Prob, and Kyle are leading.
Terry, thanks so much for sharing that. I love how you approach your work and how you were able to bring that cultural component into it. Stuff like that is so incredibly important. But now back to the boring old data stuff. So what you're looking at here today is how CJCs across the province with the same goals but different approaches are able to achieve some really stellar results through their collaboration with community organizations to help improve the personal outcomes of participants. Now, this slide here is a quick point-in-time snapshot of the work that was being done by all CJC sites in the province from October of 2022 to December of 2024. So over this period, CJCs across the province received just shy of 2,200 referrals, which equated into nearly 4,000 referrals to community agencies and their respective programs and services. Now, looking at the types of support referrals, we do see some similarities across sites. Basic needs, mental health, addictions, and employment are high across the board. Now, like I said before, data is great and it is vitally important to support an evidence-based approach, but it doesn't give us details about what happens on the ground, and it doesn't highlight some of the amazing work that happens every single day. Rather, what it can do is illuminate need. So, at the risk of being demonstrative, I'd like to say this. I don't care if people here today remember any of these specific numbers shown through these slides. What I do care about is for people leaving this presentation to realize that these numbers reflect a significant need for continued community-based involvement in our justice system. And even more so, to realize that this work is only made possible by the very people who find themselves here today. In all of the case studies reviewed here, you heard about local organizations stepping up and stepping in to improve the personal outcomes of these participants. Basic needs, mental health, addictions, employment, family support, education, housing. The CJC role is a tiny part in the broader world of social services and justice. It exists to help support the work that community is doing and to highlight the ongoing need for this type of work. You know, it takes a village to support this kind of approach to justice and to help improve personal outcomes. And with that, we'll hop over to our last slide. So for everyone here, we look forward to the ongoing collaboration with community agencies that are making a difference each day. And frankly, are the driving force and the reason for the interesting numbers and stories shared here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jenny to close us out.
Thanks, Kyle. You're right, it does take a village. A big thanks to everyone for being here today and for all of the important work that you do and will continue to do. Together, we have the power to strengthen community justice by integrating and coordinating responsive human services for justice-involved individuals, families, and victims and survivors of crime. We can work together to improve individual, community, and justice outcomes and build a process rooted in collaboration. This is how we create meaningful change together across sectors and for the people who need it the most. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Do you want me to read them out to you?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the first question is, to what extent do CJCs raise awareness of gaps in community service to higher powers, funders, ministry reps, etc.? How often are people felt to be in need of service, but wait times are too long to offer immediate impact?
Kyle, did you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. So I think every single person in this call today knows that wait lists are a very real issue among all social services. Everyone is spread a little bit thin, and thankfully one of the benefits of CJC is we're able to distribute the load of different needs across different services to try to reduce one's organization's overwhelming influx of files. But even beyond that, one of the things I was trying to demonstrate just recently is the numbers and the statistics that do come from this help support the ongoing expansion of different services. So when everyone sees that all these services are making an impact, that can certainly turn to change in the future. As far as identifying or illuminating gaps, one of the really cool things about the way CJC has worked in Windsor is working with local leadership. We've been able to identify a number of different issues. I'll speak anecdotally. During a discussion with some of this local leadership, we ended up learning that somewhere in and around 33% of individuals that are involved in self-rep JPTs in our court system don't have any disclosure or anything to that effect. And what that points to is even a bigger issue. These people are not connected with supports to help navigate this system. So through this process, we've actually been trying to collaborate with different organizations, even like the University of Windsor, to try and bring supports into the courthouse to help people navigate that kind of aspect. So here in Windsor, we've had some pretty positive results.
Amazing. Thank you. Another question then. Are you aware of plans to expand this to other areas across the province?
So we are working to expand in select other areas, and as those models evolve and help come to fruition, we will definitely be in touch and provide updates as to that.
Thank you. Okay, and the third question, you're doing great with these. Do you track recidivism rates amongst those who have received CJC services?
So we certainly track that kind of information. The difficulty right now is because the oldest CJC program, which I suppose is myself, has only been in operation for coming up on 3 years at this point. Looking at data to make inferences from that is a little bit shaky legs. But from what we see from the numbers that we currently have, we are far below provincial averages of recidivism.
Okay. Thank you. And then the final question that we have, will there be a CJC in the London Southwest region?
Not that I know of, but there is a justice center in the London community.
Wonderful. Those are all of the questions that I see in the Q&A section, and I don't see anything in the chat. So I would like to say thank you so much. That was some amazing information. I know I certainly enjoyed that. So to everybody who has participated, thank you so much. I hope you'll join me in thanking our speakers for their great presentations, for sharing all of that great knowledge with us. I would ask that everyone does take a moment to fill in the survey for this session. It's basically you can click on the agenda in your platform, choose the session that you are currently attending, and then next to the join button, you'll see that survey button. Click on the survey button, complete that short survey. We do encourage you to take some time to connect with some of the fellow participants and visit the poster and exhibitor halls, where you can actually view some of the poster presentations, connect with the exhibitors. Don't forget to add some of those resources from the exhibitors into your personal swag bags. To build your own agenda by adding sessions into your calendar, you can click on the Add to Calendar button. But we would appreciate it if you could also take a few moments to complete our conference evaluation. You can access the conference evaluation by clicking on the evaluation icon on the conference homepage in that menu bar. Your feedback will be anonymous. It's very much appreciated and will be used to plan some of the future events that are similar to today's conference. But thank you again to all of our speakers and everyone for all of your great engagement and participation. So thank you all so much. Please join us for the day one closing ceremonies by clicking on that agenda in the platform, choosing the closing remarks, and click on the join button.
And thanks to everyone for being here as well. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.